Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Goldberg, and welcome back to the Right Mind, Right Weight Summit. I'm here today with Linda Spangle. Linda is a weight loss coach. She's a speaker and an author, and she's also a registered nurse. Hi, Linda, and welcome.
Hi, thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Great. I'm glad to be a part of this. I think
Oh,
it's exciting.
thank you, thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what led you into a career, did you start as a nurse and then lead into being a weight loss coach and an author? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, I was a nurse in my first life. I did
Okay.
that for probably about 15 years and then kind of got burned out, went back to school and got a master's in health education. And from that kind of evolved into the field of weight loss. I was so interested in nutrition and health behaviors, and I found that weight loss had some of the most difficult
Yeah.
challenges of any area of health behaviors. So I got started that way, and then I actually ran a weight loss clinic for almost 15
Oh,
years.
wow.
And with that, I had people, of course, working for me, and we had somewhere around 2,200 people that came through our clinic. And lots of wonderful success stories, but lots of frustrations.
Right.
And my first book that I wrote, Life is Hard, Food is Easy, I wrote because I didn't have a resource that I wanted to give people. I said,
Okay.
you've got to have something better that explains how to deal with emotional eating, self esteem, stress, all those things. So I wrote the book I wanted to hand out. And that was kind of what got me started in my writing.
Great, great. Well, I've heard some really great things about that, your first book. Um, you have another book coming out called Friends with the Scale. Is that out already?
Yes, that's been out for a while and is doing very well. Lots of great feedback because that's changing the way people view about, again, one of the most challenging things in the field of
Right.
weight loss.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the scale.
Yes.
To some people it's the dreaded scale, and there's a lot of books and professionals and a couple of conversations I've had, just this week about throw away the scale, smash your scale, be done with the scale, don't look at the scale, forget it. But
Yep.
you have a bit of a different point of view about that. Tell us, your opinion on the scale.
Absolutely. I think saying everyone should throw away the scale is a little bit like saying everyone should be vegetarian or should play golf. Those are good things, but not everyone is the same. In
Correct.
my work, what I have found is there are definitely some people who are better off not having a scale, never getting on one. It's just they get too obsessed with it and it
Right,
just messes with them.
right.
So they're better off not having one. And yet there are an awful lot of other people who do just fine with a scale. I think part of the skill
Mhm.
is learning how to manage the scale so it
Okay.
doesn't own you and instead it's a tool as part of your weight loss program.
Okay, so tell us, when should somebody weigh? How often? I know there's probably times where you definitely shouldn't get on the scale. I mean, working with my clients, the scale sometimes puts their emotions like this, and then, I try to tell them, well, if it fluctuates a little bit, it's not fat weight. So what do you tell people? How often, when should they
Sure.
not? Tell us a little bit about what you found in your experience.
I think it's different for everyone because some people love to weigh themselves every day and
Right,
it's a marker for them. It's just a way that they keep track. And as long as that doesn't get them into bad moods because the scale went the wrong direction, I think it's fine to weigh themselves every day. I have other people who weigh themselves once a week. I have one client who weighs himself once a month on the first of every month, whatever day
okay,
that falls. That's when he weighs himself. I really think there doesn't have to be a rule about it, but here's the most important thing.
okay,
Once you get on the scale, I figure there's just a couple of simple steps. First of all, to be accurate in the way, it should be first thing in the morning
mm-hmm,
before you eat or drink anything, and usually with either no clothes or minimal clothes, and let it be consistently that way. But here's the steps. Step on, note the reading, step off,
okay.
leave the room. Don't start playing around, like moving the scale around to different places on the floor. Or, there's so many tricks that people do to try to get a little better reading. I've had people that will dry their hair, make sure they haven't drank a sip of water. I had one lady who would not put her contacts in until she had
Oh my
gotten on the
goodness.
scale. So I think it's important that people get past some of those things, that trying to trick the scale and play games with
Right.
it. Instead, make it very simple. If you want to record it, fine. Write it down or make a mental note and then be done. Don't go back. Don't weigh yourself again later in the day. Weigh yourself at night, which people will do to see how bad they were.
Oh
It's like one of the
goodness.
worst things you can do because
Right.
all you're seeing is changes in your fluid levels. Has nothing to do with your fat stores.
Right. Right. So that's actually, I know you sometimes talk about when not to get on the scale. That's the best time not to get on the scale because you've eaten, you've got food in your body, you've got fluid in your body. Sometimes just gravity, we retain water in our body. And
That's
and so it's not the best time. Are there other times aside from the end of the day after you've had a whole day's, worth of food not to get on the scale?
I think there are definitely a few times to never get on the scale. One of them is anytime when you've traveled, whether it's by plane, especially, but even if you've traveled a couple of hours by car, there is always going to be some fluid retention
Mhm.
as a result. So, my rule of thumb is anytime you've traveled or been on a vacation, especially a long vacation, always wait from the time you get home at least 2 to 3 days before you get on the
Oh, that
scale.
long.
And the big reason is the first day, you're not getting an accurate reading, and you know how people are. Well, let's see how much I gained on vacation. Except that then the scale is up 6 pounds,
Right.
but four of that is fluid, and within 2 days it's gone. And it just messes with your head. My goal in my work around the scale is to
Okay.
help people become healthy about it. Healthy about weight loss, healthy about their exercise, healthy about the scale is just a tool. It's sort of like if you took your child's temperature, you wouldn't obsess all day about whether you held
Right.
the thermometer right. You
Right.
know, it's a tool, and a scale is a tool. So the more you can learn to just be comfortable with it as a tool, the healthier you'll be about it.
Well, you talk about, and I think you mentioned a little bit before, and about rituals. Is moving the scale around is on the floor to see if the number changes. Is that a ritual? And if it is,
That's
what are some other rituals that people do that they should probably stop doing because it's not really going to change your true weight?
right. I think one of the toughest things is when people are going to a weight loss meeting of some
Mm-hmm.
kind, be it, a franchise, Weight Watchers, whatever. So what happens is people get into this little ritual they do before they go to the meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they wear exactly the same clothes every day, and they make sure that they have not eaten anything, even if they go to an evening meeting. I've had people do that, not eat all day, and all they're doing is trying to make it look like they've done really well and are losing weight. Except that, of course,
Right.
all you're really doing is tricking yourself. And it doesn't work in the long run. It just plays more games. What I think is a better way to manage it,
Uh-huh.
if you're going to a meeting of some kind, weigh yourself in the morning like usual and make a note of it. When you get to your meeting, if it's required, which in many cases it is, to step on their scale, just
Mm-hmm.
say,
Right.
fine, I'll step on the scale, but I know this is the number that I'm actually going by. This is what I weighed this morning.
Right. So people have an emotional attachment to the number. I know it could really dictate somebody's mood. So, what do
Yeah.
you tell your clients that you work with when let's talk about somebody who steps on the scale every day. So, somebody who steps on the scale every day, I'm guessing that scale is going to fluctuate every day, and they might come to you, or however they stay in contact with you, whether it's weekly or sometimes through email. If they're kind of really hung up on that, what do
Yeah.
you tell them to reassure them that it's not that they've gained 2 pounds of body fat in a week? Because I think people kind of really need to know that.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing, if that's something that happens for you, is that you track what your weight is, except ideally track it in something like an Excel spreadsheet or someplace
Mhm.
where you can see a graph of it so that over time you can see the trend. And, I teach people, think of the scale reading as data. That's all it is.
Okay.
It is just a number. It is not a judgment about you as a person. It's just data.
Ooh,
And
that's
kind of
good.
like if you were have investments in the stock market, you wouldn't panic because one day one of your stocks went down 10 points and you wouldn't sell it all off immediately. You just
Right.
go, okay, I have to watch and see how it's trending. It's the same thing with the scale. What you want to know is, are you staying the same? Or if you're working on losing weight, is it trending downward or are you trending upward? It's data and track how it's trending. But don't get hung up on, oh dear, that particular number means I'm really a failure. That's so unhealthy mentally for you.
Well, a lot of people have an emotional attachment to the number. And you just said before, don't use it as a judgment. And
Yes.
a lot of people do. They use it to judge themselves as a failure. I failed, especially for somebody who gets on the scale every day, because it's never going to be the same if you step on the scale every day. So what you're in essence is suggesting is become a little emotionally detached from the number and look at it as more, it's just information as to possibly where you were and where you're going.
Absolutely. I think that's the key word right there. It is information. That is exactly what it is. I'll tell you a quick story of a lady I worked with who would get on her scale, and every day she would say, I wonder which body part to blame now. Is it my heavy thighs? Is it my big stomach? Just cutting herself down, trying to figure out what to blame for the scale number. Finally, one day she said, I realize that is stupid. I'm just using these horrible thoughts about myself for something that may or may not be correct. So she decided to change completely what she said about the scale number. What she did, she made a list of words, and they were things like beautiful, sexy, happy, cute, just all kinds of great little words. And then she put them on 3x5 cards, kept them in a stack beside her scale. Each day, she would get on their scale, she would note her number, then she would pick up one of the cards and read it, and the rest of the day, she would use that card to describe her that day. So she might say, okay, today I am adorable. And that's the word she would use all day, instead of letting the scale give her some really negative word about herself. Isn't that a great way to change your thinking?
Right. Well, then, but it's kind of positive messaging. She's giving herself positive and not letting the scale dictate something negative.
That's right.
Because a lot of people do. A lot of people. So I know you work a lot of times. A lot of your work is with people who are, eat emotionally.
Yes.
So they have those feelings. So what tips or what strategies or what advice do you give your clients that do get on the scale and might have an emotional attachment to it, but also are either stress eaters or emotional eaters? So we kind of want to fix that behavior. So kind of how do you marry the two so there's not so much emotion going on?
Sure. I think they're somewhat connected, of course, but they're also separate. So if you think about, a common thing would be get on the scale, go, oh, no, this is awful. See, my diet isn't working. I might as well just throw in the towel and go eat today. That's what I see people do. Now, that's an emotional attachment to the reading, but it's also emotional eating. I don't like how I feel. I'm going to go eat. Why changing those patterns takes some work. It takes some training. I think part of it is, again, separating from the scale and saying, okay, fine. It's information. It's just a number. Sort of like, what is the temperature outside? It's just a number. You don't eat all day because the temperature is 52. You just don't. So that's step one. Then the second thing is, I teach people, ask a couple of really simple questions. They're sort of like 3 questions. What's going on? What do I feel? What do I need? You can roll those through in 20 seconds. So what's going on? Well, I thought I was being so faithful to my diet, and it doesn't look like I'm losing weight right now. How do I feel? Well, I feel kind of disappointed, a little bummed about it. What do I need? Well, I need to let go of that and actually build myself up a little bit with some confidence and trust that if I stay on my plan, it's going to eventually bring results. So I just walk through it.
Okay. And do you kind of coach them through each step? Because some people have a little trouble with the logic part of it, because when I hear you say it, it's completely logical, and I completely agree. But for those people that have been struggling for so long, and you say it takes time, so is there a time period? I know everybody's different. So, because what I'm trying to do, as is you, is kind of get off people that dieting cycle. So, how do we get them off that dieting cycle if they are so emotional about the number and they judge themselves by the number? How is it, I mean, how do you get your clients to separate from that?
I think again, it's training yourself to relabel what the scale is. The scale is, here's the thing. People somehow think that the scale can be a cause and effect. I ate this way, the scale will show this.
Right.
Sometimes that's true. But of course, a lot of times it's not.
Right.
In fact, in the book Friends with the Scale, there's a chapter that lists 14 factors that affect the scale reading that have nothing to do with your eating. So it's things like, of course, we all know hormones can affect it, especially for women. The temperature, heat, and humidity. If you think about it on a hot, humid day, try to turn your rings.
Right.
Well, that means you're probably holding a couple pounds of fluid, and that can be reflected on the scale. Do you know that even the tide, certain times of year, the tide will actually affect people's weight as it shows on the scale? So I think retraining yourself to say, wait a minute, what I see on the scale is not always a reflection of me and my actions. So I need to quit judging myself or being so hard on myself. And I think a lot of it's trusting that as I eat in healthy ways,
Right.
as I exercise consistently, as I drink my water, I am taking care of my body. And if I'm following a healthy program, I am probably going the right direction for losing weight. And it may not show on the scale immediately as a change in the number, because sometimes it's not cause and effect. It's over time that matters.
Right, exactly. So part of what might happen with people who get on their scale and have some, negative thoughts or feelings, there's something called failure thinking. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that and how to avoid failure thinking, because nobody wants to feel like they're a failure, especially when it comes to their health.
Yeah, exactly. I think failure thinking can happen in a lot of areas of I'll call it our weight loss and health efforts. But the scale sometimes is a prompter of that because, again, here's the thinking. Well, I had a great week. Mm-hmm. I followed my program all week. I got my exercising in every single day. I know this is a great week. I get on the scale Saturday morning, maybe that's the day I weigh myself, and it didn't change. Mm-hmm. Or it went up a half a pound. All I can think is, I blew it. I've done something wrong. I have failed. There is something wrong with me. It's like, wait a minute. Maybe not. Maybe there's something wrong with the scale. But that's the thinking we slide into. And I think the retraining has to be, wait a minute. If I stay with healthy actions, the outcome will follow, and I will see the change on the scale. If you depend on the scale to give you motivation and to say, yeah, the scale will change, and now that'll keep me going, you're in trouble because there will be days when that won't work. And yes, that's when failure thinking comes. Failure thinking is kind of, I teach my clients to throw a lot of words out the window and not use them anymore because I just think they're loaded words. Failure is one of them. You cannot fail at weight loss or weight maintenance. You just can't. It's impossible. You can have struggles with some of your actions or maybe not be as consistent, but I just don't like the word fail. People say, oh, I'm so afraid I'll fail again. It's like, you know what? Put that word away. And instead, let's say, all right, how do we help you stay on a healthy path and move forward day after day after day? That's what matters.
What are some of the other words that you make them throw away? Because fail is a big one, but there's some other words. So right off the top of your head, what are a couple of words that you tell people,
Yeah, absolutely. One of them is blew it. You know, when you say, wow, I did so well all day, and then, oh man, this afternoon I got into those brownies in the break room. See, I blew it. Part of the reason is, whenever you say I blew it, what follows? Well, so then who cares? I might as well eat the rest of the evening. And that's really detrimental.
Right.
So instead of blew it, the word I teach people to use is the word pause. It's a little bit like, okay, you were taking a hike and you got a little tired. You stopped and sat on a rock and had a drink of water. You don't say, oh, see, I can't do a hike. Oh, I might as well quit. Or you don't make yourself walk the last 100 yards over again. You say, I had a pause. After you've had a little rest, you get up and you move on. Okay, so suppose you've been really doing well on a weight loss plan and somebody brought those brownies to the break room and you ate 2 of them. I had a little pause this afternoon, but that's okay. I'm past it now. So come dinner time, I go back to my healthy eating instead of saying, "Oh, I blew it. I might as well just eat the rest of the night."
Right. No, that's really good because basically you're allowing people to eat. It's by saying it was just a pause, it was just a moment. It wasn't that it was a good thing or a bad thing. It was something that you just did because you wanted to in the moment
Exactly.
and you took a pause.
Mhm.
Right. So there's no negative thrown in there.
And you're not judging yourself. You're not saying, "What a wretch I am." No, you're just saying, apparently I had a little pause. And sometimes we'll have a reason why I was stressed, I was tired, I was
Yeah.
whatever. Sometimes we won't. Sometimes the brownies just looked really good and we wanted to taste them. And that's what
So
happened.
right, exactly, exactly. But that's just what makes us human. So you also have a way to. There's so many people, and I know I've worked with, especially women. There's a lot of women that don't want to weigh themselves, and they don't even go to the doctor because one of the things that they do is they don't go to the doctor because they don't want to get on the scale. They don't want to have any idea, what they weigh, and so it prevents them from going to the doctor. What do you tell people? Because going to the doctor, especially if you're that uncomfortable and that overweight, because there's health issues that sometimes follow that. So it's important to see your physician regularly or at least annually. What do you tell people about going to the doctor?
Well, you're nailing something that is so common. It's the phrase I hear from people is, "I don't want them to tell me I'm fat. I already know it, but I don't need them to tell me." And their fear is even just getting on the scale at the doctor's office will reveal that they are overweight. And so I've had people, I had one lady who said, "I cannot believe how many OBGYN appointments I canceled because I dreaded getting on the scale and I couldn't bear it." I had another lady I worked with who went 40 years without going to the doctor because she didn't want to get on the
Oh
scale.
my
It finally
goodness.
took a heart attack for her to get past that. So here's the deal. First of all, a lot of people don't realize this, but do you know that you do not have to weigh or be weighed when you go to the doctor's office? It's not a requirement. And if they say that it is, there's ways around it. Because, first of all, I know, in fact, I've had many physicians
Uh-huh.
affirm this for me that it is not required. So, here's what you can do. When you get into the doctor's office, the typical thing is, all right, we take your temperature, maybe take your blood pressure, and we say,
Right.
put your step on the scale. What you do is you say, "I prefer not to weigh today," or "I choose not to," or something along that line. I have one lady that
Okay.
says, "I decline."
Okay. That's a polite way of saying
Usually,
it.
usually the staff person will just say, "Oh, okay, that's fine." Or if they do say, and I had this happen recently, I had a sprained finger. I went to the doctor's office and the lady said, "Please get on the scale." And I was thinking, first of all, for a sprained finger. Anyway, so I
Right.
said, "I prefer not to be weighed." And she said, "Well, I'm sorry, but we're required to have a weight." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, how about I would like to meet with the doctor first. And then if the doctor would like to get a weight, I could be happy to do that." She said, "Okay, that'll be fine." So I went, of course, met with the doctor. We talked about my sprained finger, and he
Uh-huh.
took care of it. And then I left. He never asked me to get on the
Right.
scale. So again, it's back to you be in charge of you. The question I teach people is, who owns your weight? You
Hmm.
do. No one else owns your number, your scale number, your weight, your size. No one but
Right.
you. No one, not even your family members. If you choose to share that, that's fine. That's up to you. But you own it. So when you go to the doctor's office, if you want, you can say to the doctor, "Here's what I weighed this morning at home." You can write it in the chart. Or you can do
Right.
like I did and just say, "No, I think I prefer not." Um, Negotiate that way. And if in some cases there are situations where it really is important or necessary to get a weight because of
Right.
medications or history,
That's true.
in that case, there's a simple thing. You step on the scale and you can either close your eyes or you can look up at the ceiling. And when they say okay, then you get off. And you can even say, "I choose not to know the number." That's again, you now are standing in charge instead of letting them be in charge of your
Right.
life.
Right. I actually have my clients, well, weighing in my office is optional. Some people
Like,
do, some people don't. Some people choose, this week I will and this week I won't. But if they want me to have a gauge, they step on backwards. They
Yes.
just step on it backwards. They don't look. I shut it off before they step off, and so this way I kind of know how they're progressing, and they're just still perfectly fine and not attached to the number. But
I did the same thing. I think that is honoring people where they are.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes there's some past history that gets in the way. I had a lady I worked with a lot of years ago who was working on losing quite a lot of weight, and she was doing a program where it really was required to record a weight each
Uh-huh.
time she came in. So we made the deal that yes, she would stand backwards because she said, I can't stand the thought of the number. Well, that was fine. So we did that for, I don't know, a couple of months at least. And one day I said to her, what would it take for you to be able to actually look at the number? Well, she said, I have to go back to something. When I was a kid,
Hmm.
I started being overweight already and I was about fourth or fifth grade. And my mother was very rigid. She put me on this rigid diet and I had to be weighed every Friday. And if I hadn't lost
Wow.
weight, she was, very punitive and scolded me. And she said, I think to this day, I'm hearing her scolding voice and I'm afraid if I get on the scale, I'll
Absolutely.
hear it again. Well, we talked about it some, and I said, isn't that interesting? How long do you want to let your mother's voice control you as an adult? Or do you think maybe you could let it go? She said, I'm going to think about that. So she did. The next week, she came in, she took a big, deep breath, and she stepped on the scale facing forward. She said, I told her to go away.
That is great. That's a great story because the truth is, a lot of this stuff, a lot of emotional eating, stress eating, a lot of it starts from the conditioning as children. Whatever happened as being young, what you saw in your family, whether it was something like what this mother did, or whether it was just the way things were in the family, and the whole family kind of participated in the some kind of emotional eating habits. Um, it's really powerful. It's really powerful, and that woman's story is so exact about what happens to so many people is they have these memories, not good memories, associated with food or emotions and being overweight or being made to feel bad. And so um, that's really, and the fact that in her own time when she was ready, but she recognized where it was coming from, and in her own good time, she let it go. I think that's a great story. And I think for the listeners out there who know kind of what resonates with them as to where their stuff is and why they emotionally eat or what their connections are either to the scale or their weight or to food, to go back a little bit and try to figure it out. Because once you figure it out, like that woman did, she said goodbye. Sometimes, it doesn't seem easy, but sometimes once you say goodbye and you acknowledge it, it's a major step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that whole idea of, the question I teach people to ask is, what was the message I gave myself way back then?
Mm-hmm.
And in her case, the message was a very negative one that every time I get on the scale, I'm going to hear this screeching. Anyway, then you say, was that message still valid? Does that still count today? And if you think, well, of course not, that was a childhood message, then like she did, you say, okay, I am done with that message. I'm not going to hold it anymore. I'm sending it away, or I'm telling that voice to go away and be quiet and be done. It's amazing how powerful that can be.
Right, right, absolutely. And they're it's and there's some of the times the voices in your head that kind of keep you stuck on that emotional roller coaster.
Sure did.
And so part of what in talking about the scale, and I know we kind of didn't talk about this, but for so many people who are trying to lose some weight and they're doing everything right, they're exercising and they're drinking their water and they're, eating real healthy food, things are moving right along until it's not anymore. So there's that thing that we all hear about called the weight loss plateau, which it does happen. And it's frustrating. And you don't want it to set people back because now they're feeling a little frustrated. What do you do? What do you tell your people, or how do you fix that?
Sure. Plateaus are a very common thing. I've noticed in the research, and also in my own clinic, I saw this. There are some timetables when you can almost expect one. One of them is when you have lost about half of the amount of weight that you were hoping to lose. So when someone's working on 100 pounds to lose, When they get to around, if they lost maybe 45 or 50, that is a common place for a plateau.
Good to know.
I'm not sure just why, but it seems as though the body kind of reshuffles a little and says, wait a minute, am I really okay? And it thinks about it, sometimes for days, sometimes for a couple of weeks. But then finally it says, oh, I guess I'm okay. And then it lets go and it starts to lose again. There definitely are things that you can do if you've hit a plateau. I had a lady who had lost 30 pounds, needed to lose 30 more. This was a creature of habit. Every morning she got out of bed, put on her shoes, out the door, and took a 30-minute walk. And walked about the same pace. Then she came home. Then she ate almost the same foods every day. She was just a creature of habit.
Okay.
What we did was I said, I think we need to switch things up. And so we started, though, with her exercise. I said, what I want you to switch up is I want you to, first of all, change the kind of activity. So don't do the same thing 2 days in a row. So you can walk one day, ride a bike one day, do an elliptical or a machine another day, but keep alternating it. Then I said also, when you do your walk, speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. In other words, change the pace a little bit. So she began working with that, and she decided she would shake up her food a little bit too. And so she made some changes, put a little more variety in things. But I think that exercise change alone was real significant. It took about 2 weeks of that.
Okay.
And her weight began to drop again. And over time, she lost her last 30 pounds as well.
Well, I do think the body gets used to, being also a personal trainer, I know the body gets used to a certain amount of exercise, and when it gets really efficient at that exercise, it thinks, I'm good. I'm comfortable, I'm good, I've got this down, and now you need to challenge it again. And I think sometimes, as you were saying, she switched up her food, sometimes everything needs like a little bit of a shake-up, so to speak. And then the body's kind of like, what is this? This is new. I'm metabolizing this different, or, my body's moving differently and I require more energy to move faster. So it definitely shakes things up a bit. So basically, be patient. Is that it? That if they're doing everything right and they switch something up, then most likely they're going to move past that?
I think so. I think the challenging thing with a plateau is it's too easy to give up. Go, see, it's not working. I don't know what to do. It's not working.
Right.
So then people give up. They go back to old patterns and skip exercise. And of course, then it really doesn't work at all. So I do think being patient is really, really important. There's another thing that, again, I have a section on it in the book, Friends with the Scale. And that's interval training, and I know you're real familiar with that. It's simply the idea of alternating the activity levels. And there's many theories on how to go about it. The one I like teaches, let's say if you're walking on a treadmill at a certain pace, walk at a real average pace for 9 minutes, then crank it up for 1 minute. Then after the end of the 1 minute, slow it back down to your average pace. And I'm not going to give specific numbers because that's individual. But it's fascinating because over time, you might do the speed up part for 2 minutes instead of 1. And you get your body actually far more conditioned. Interval training has gotten a lot of press in the last years, as you know, as being a wonderful way to shake the body up a little bit, get it out of being used to the pattern. And it makes a huge difference.
Well, not just that. Interval training, for those people that are just starting an exercise program, it's a great way to get started because there's no way that you're going to start to run and think you're going to run for 10, 15, 20 minutes at a clip. But the interval training is you start to walk, even if you jog for 30 seconds to a minute, and then you walk in the same thing. Eventually, you will get better at it because that's what, and you could just kind of progress from there. And there's so many great studies on interval training. So it's a good chapter in your book, and I think people should buy your book, Friends with the Scale.
Thank you.
Right? And so I know you have a free gift to also offer the listeners today. Is there a download or a link to your site or a free download that you have?
Yes, there will be. I've got to get that put together yet, but it will be coming soon, and I'll give you details to add in.
Terrific, terrific. So there is going to be a great gift for everybody. The day of your interview, they'll be getting an email, and they'll be able to download whatever that great surprise gift, and based upon just the tips that you told us from your book, I have a feeling it's going to be some real useful, great information. So Thank you, Linda. It was really wonderful to have you here today. And I think, for all those people that want to be on the scale, they use the scale for a tool, they use it as a gauge in their weight loss, and it kind of keeps them on track. For a lot of people, it's really helpful in maintenance to step on the scale so they know things don't start creeping in the other direction. So, it's really great information to let people know that it is a tool, it's data, it's numbers, and just look at it that way, which I think a lot of people don't think about. So I think you really gave people some good food for thought as to it's just, it's logical, it's data, take the emotional out of it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me a part of this. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and you have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, Linda.
Bye.